Recap of the best videos of Pierre Poilievre this week. This is the beginning of his rally after Mark Carney failed us by not being able to do a deal with Donald Trump when we found out that he was putting a pause on all tariffs and reducing them to 10%. Those tariffs that we have at 25% would have dropped to 10%, and we wouldn't have had any tariffs to worry about for 90 days. But since Mark Carney retaliated when they said not to retaliate, everyone got rewarded for not retaliating except Canada and China for some odd reason. He says, don't retaliate. We retaliated the day before. They're just doing that to cause chaos and actually look like, cause a problem and look like the solution. Classic liberal. Now, anyways, Pierre Poilievre addresses the matter of Mark Carney being a failure at his job. Let's start with this video.
Before I get into the subject today, which of course is to announce the biggest crackdown on crime in Canadian history, I have to address today's latest disrespect by President Trump of our country. While President Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs for dozens of countries, he kept those tariffs in place on Canada. Take that in for a moment. Almost every country in the world got a pause on American tariffs, but not us, America's best friend. Our steel workers, aluminum workers, auto workers, lumber workers hit again. This after Prime Minister Carney boasted that he had a, quote, productive phone call with the president. He said that he had made progress with the president. What progress? What progress do the auto workers in Brampton and Windsor and elsewhere in Canada today see? Now, to be clear, I'm not blaming Prime Minister Carney for President Trump's tariffs. These tariffs are uncalled for and unjustified, and no one can control this president. But that's precisely the point. Prime Minister Carney is running his entire campaign on a false promise that he can control the president through magical, masterful negotiating techniques. Well, we know now that that is not true. Nobody can control this president. And while I will move quickly to negotiate an end to tariffs with protections for Canadian sovereignty as quickly as possible, we need to focus on what we can control. And this is what we can control, my friends. We need to reverse the disastrous liberal economic policies of the last 10 years that made us so dependent on the Americans in the first place. So the choice in this election is not, as Mr. Carney would ask you, to overlook an entire decade of rising costs and crime and falling economy that is under the thumb of the Americans simply because he promises that somehow he's a master negotiator. No, he can't control any of that. What we are deciding in this election is, can we afford a fourth liberal term of rising costs and crime and a weakened economy? Or is it time for a change with a new conservative government?
It makes me laugh when the liberals are like, we're a progressive party, so we're going to say, they're called progressive liberals now. So when the Conservative Party in Ontario changed their name for the Progressive Conservatives, I was like, that sounds liberal as hell, man. And look at that. Anyways, next video is a video of Pierre Poilievre saying that Donald Trump can smell weakness from a mile away. I want you guys to see this woman that used to work with Donald Trump a long time ago, and she explains what is one of Donald Trump's best, attributes when it comes to negotiating with people.
They have a president with a strong and fresh mandate. And he's someone who is a very powerful negotiator who can spot weakness from a mile away. And what does he see when he looks at Justin Trudeau and the NDP Liberal government? He sees a ridiculous clown show of chaos, and that screams weakness.
That was the deal. How did he do that? I'll tell you what his masterful mind does. He is a genius at picking out the vulnerability of someone's personality. He can smell it, sense it, and trust it. Okay? So, for example, if you were to walk into a business meeting with Donald and you're saying whatever you're saying, I've seen it time and time again, he could see what your weakness is and not physically reach over and put his finger on it, but he just could see what your weakness is and play into it. Not the nicest thing in the world, but it's a certain gift I've never seen any.
Now we have this journalist that comes to see Pierre to ask him, Pierre, does size matter? Pierre started laughing, like, what are you asking me about my, what? You think people vote for conservatives because they got small, what? Why do you think people vote for conservatives? Because we got massive conservative balls.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I want to ask about...
How did you like our rally last night?
Well, I wanted to ask about your rallies.
Thank you.
And whether size matters. I actually want to know about your rallies and
Instead of talking about how small Mark Carney's rallies are right now on the news, on CBC, they're trying to debunk the amount of people that were actually at Pierre's rallies. They're like, there was only 7,000 people. Okay, so there wasn't 10,000, there was only 7 or 8,000 people. This rally right here, they said there was 8,000 people. There was only probably like 6.5, Whatever the amount of people that you think was there. There was a lot more people at Pierre's rallies during this election than at any other time in the history of Canadian politics. So, thank you for talking about how big these rallies were.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I want to ask about...
How did you like our rally last night?
Well, I wanted to ask about your rallies.
Thank you.
And whether size matters.
Well, that's pretty obvious. I think you can be more precise than that.
I mean, the party said 10,000 registered. There's reports of 15. I really can't say.
One last question. When was the last time we had a rally that big in Canada?
I don't know. I've never been to a political rally that big, I don't think.
You know a lot about politics.
Well,
You're a very well-informed person. I know that if there were a bigger rally than that, you would know about it. I think so. But I think it was pretty incredible. Were any of you there? Yes. Magic, eh? Wow. Incredible. Listen, I think to have 10 or 15,000 people at one political rally, this is a movement like we've never seen because people want change. They want to put our country first for a change. They've seen that after the lost Liberal decade of doubling housing costs, of rising crime, of taxes out of control, of our economy weakened under America's thumb, that they can't afford to live. And what they want is a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change.
4 generations. Canadians have built this great country on the idea that if you work hard, like the people here at New Flyer, if you work hard, you should be able to afford a good life.
What binds us together is the Canadian promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work gets you a great life.
Have a good home in a welcoming and safe community.
In a beautiful, affordable home, on a safe street, protected by brave soldiers.
And it's the duty of my government and governments at all levels to make that promise a reality.
Canada first, let's bring it home!
He's not plagiarizing Pierre, he's just like basically saying almost the exact same thing. He's plagiarizing their platform. He basically didn't come up with any actual policy other than the carbon tax. He's not doing anything. He's just copying Pierre because he knows that what Pierre's doing is good.
Now, before I do that, though, I want to just say that I want to challenge Mark Carney to show up for the debate. We'll even pay Mr. Carney's fee so that he can show up. We'll take that excuse away from him. Conservatives will even pay the fee to bring him out if he's not afraid. And by the way, if he is afraid to have the debate, how is he going to have the courage to stand up against Donald Trump? It's going to take someone who's strong enough to do that. And if he's not afraid, then he'll show up at that debate. I'm not afraid, and I'm ready to enjoy that debate with him.
This made me laugh when Pierre offered to pay Mark Carney's fee of $75,000. And the Green Party shouldn't be at any debates. The next debate, where they're actually inviting 2 of the Green Party. There's 2 candidates for the Green Party. And they're considered both leaders of the Green Party. So what, you guys are going to talk twice? You're going to get questions twice? And just remove airtime from the rest of the people? They shouldn't even be there on CBC because of the rules. They're not an official party. They have 2 candidates. They shouldn't be at the debate.
Explain once and for all the situation with your security clearance.
Well, first of all, I've already had the clearance. I was a minister in a cabinet, so I've already been cleared. Secondly, what the Liberals have been trying to get me to do is sign an oath of secrecy so that I can't speak publicly about foreign interference without their permission, to get locked in to an oath of confidentiality, so that when an issue of foreign interference comes up, I have to risk criminal prosecution if I say something the government considers that it has briefed me on, even if I might have said it anyway.
Can you imagine if Pierre would have gotten his security clearance when they actually found Chinese interference on the WeChat and, you know, everything that's going on there? He wouldn't have even been able to call out Mark Carney for it. That's exactly why they want him to get his clearance, to prevent him from talking about it. Because they know they're interfering. They probably wanted him to take it really, really quick, you know, in the last 2 weeks, because they knew they were getting interfered with by China.
How do you address the concerns of being too closely aligned to a foreign government that is threatening Canada and is destroying its own country right now?
Well, your question is false. Mr. Trump has endorsed the Liberals. He said it would be easier for him if the Liberals stay in power. He said it multiple times. He said that he doesn't agree with me, he doesn't support me, and he doesn't want me to be Prime Minister of Canada. I think a lot of people have to ask themselves, why does Donald Trump want the Liberals in power for a fourth term? The answer is clear. He wants Canada to be weak. Good morning.
Hi, Abigail Beeman, CTV News. Your party has dropped 4 candidates in 2 days. How can Canadians be convinced of your vetting process for people you believe are fit to govern this country? And here in Kingston, how does that vetting process extend to Mr. Patterson for his previous connection to a church that supported conversion therapy?
Well, first of all, you omitted from your question that Mr. Patterson renounced conversion therapy years ago. And so the question is not accurate. Secondly, our vetting process is stronger than all the other parties. That's why we have a zero tolerance for anyone who acts unacceptably. This is the exact opposite of what we saw from Mr. Carney, who tried to keep on as a candidate someone who had asked for his conservative opponent to be handed over to the Chinese Communist government on a bounty, to be imprisoned or maybe murdered because he was a dissident against that government. Mr. Carney said that it was a teachable moment. He's right. It taught all of us that Mark Carney will never put Canada first. He sold out. He went to China to get a $250 million loan from the Chinese government while he was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. He met with top officials in the central bank. He met with the mayor of Beijing. He built his own profit off of compromising himself and his company. He still has those compromises because he has money, untold millions, invested in Brookfield that owes all of this money still to the government in Beijing. So how are we going to know when he's acting for Canada rather than acting for his bottom line? In fact, he wants to put the Liberal policies on steroids. His housing plan, I don't know if you saw this earlier this week, he wants to create a government-run construction company that is going to make prefab tiny homes with no parking spots. This is his idea for housing. This is even more radical than the stuff that came from Stephen Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau over the last 10 years. This is not a serious plan to protect our economy and break our dependence.
What a coincidence, man, that Brookfield invested in companies that do prefab homes, that sell heat pumps, that actually, you know, sell solar panels. What a strange coincidence that every investment that the Liberals announced happened to intersect with Brookfield, the company that Mark Carney has millions of dollars invested in. Wow.
Mark Carney and his team of Trudeau Liberals want you to forget. They want you to forget the 10 years of growing bureaucracy and shrinking wages, the anti-development and anti-growth policies. They want you to think that somehow they will be different than they were in the last 3 terms. Now, I can't help but notice that Mr. Carney is contradicting himself again today as he plagiarizes my latest policy. On April the 1st, just 4 or 5 days ago, his government got rid of the apprenticeship grant. And today, after seeing that I support the grant and I'll bring it back, he's trying to plagiarize me yet again. You can't believe anything he says when he does one thing on April Fool's Day, and then not even a week later, he says the opposite. He is just like Justin Trudeau, and there will be no change if you give Liberals a 4th term.
So it's a couple of people I've been seeing sharing like screenshots of like their videos being removed on TikTok. Like a bunch of people are getting videos removed because they're talking about Mark Carney and the Liberals. They're talking about, I believe, stuff that's true. Why is China on TikTok removing videos that are basically, you know, defending the Conservatives and bringing down the Liberals? Why is there a censorship campaign on TikTok only targeting Conservatives? Once again, China is interfering with our elections because they want Mark Carney to win because he's corrupt and compromised. Why else? You can still do good business with China whether you're Pierre Poilievre or another MP, but they want Mark Carney because he'll probably be approving stuff that the others won't approve. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Thanks for watching.